and we'll be talking about that here on the show and all along those lines. I know a lot's going on in regards to politics and what's happening on the world stage, and I've got a very special guest that'll be talking about diplomacy and all along those lines because she's been involved in that space, and she's definitely thinking that some of our corporations and maybe even some of our politicians need to learn more about diplomacy and how to talk to each other. I know that even on this show, we sometimes talk over each other and have conversations like that, which you would probably not be a big fan of, and all along those lines. So definitely that is something that we'll be talking about and all in that space and all seeing what folks have got to say about a number of these things that are taking place in the world and their reaction to them and everything like that. Just to get to a couple of the news items, Trump is renewing threats against Iranian oil and energy facilities. Legal experts question whether Trump's threats to Iran's energy infrastructure cross a line. So that's something that folks are talking about as well as Trump threatens to destroy Iran's desalination plants. And definitely that's what folks are talking about, even asking what that could mean for the entirety of the Middle East and all along those lines. And Kuwaiti oil tanker in Dubai port. So Iran strikes fully loaded oil tanker off Dubai coast as gas reaches $4 per gallon in the U.S. So that's definitely something that folks are talking about as well. And Trump tells the UK and other countries, go get your own oil from the Strait of Hormuz. So definitely that's something that is in the news as well. And Russia is slowly trying to splinter its internet from the rest of the world, analysts say. So Putin's internet blackout, a chaotic drive to cut off Russian from the world. So as Putin takes Russians off the grid, there are growing signs of discontent in that part of the world. And Israel passes law allowing death penalty for Palestinians. Israel passes laws to hang Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks. Hundreds rally in West Bank against the Israeli death penalty for Palestinians. So that's something that is also being covered in the Middle East. And U.S. attacks Isfahan in Iran. As I said, the gas prices are definitely going at around $4. So lots going on in the Middle East, but it's not just in the Middle East. There are other places that are having outbreaks of violence as well. At least 70 were killed in a Haiti massacre, rights group says, far exceeding official toll. So dozens killed as gang attacks ravaged western Haiti ahead of international forces' arrival. So at least 70 people killed and 30 injured in Haiti gang attacks. So that had to do with the gangs in that area and everything like that. And Germany's Merz says 80% of Syrian immigrants should return home. So Merz and Syrian president talk refugee returns. So that's something that's going on in the news as well. So that's just some of the news items. I'm going to bring in my special guest, see what she's got to say about diplomacy. She was a former diplomat and a former spy, and all along those lines. And she's definitely written a book about diplomacy from the standpoint of the businesses and the business world, or the executive world, and everything like that. And like I said, even on this show, we sometimes have various panelists, and they might be joining us later on. I know Dr. Sharif was here earlier because he just put the destination to one of his destinations, and he comes out of Bangladesh, so he may return. And I expect others may join around the 10-minute mark as well, but you never can tell. It's news and it's Pod TV, so we'll see how it all goes and everything like that. So I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your book and this whole notion of diplomacy, because it seems like we need a lot of diplomacy in the world, and we're not having a lot of diplomacy in the way that we probably should be having it, and all in that sense. So I'd love to hear your take on what's going on and what we can do better.
Well, good morning. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Diplomacy is really something that goes on first in your head.
Mm,
When you enter any situation, especially when you're representing a country
mm,
other and not just yourself, you are that country. Even though they know that you are just a person working for the United States, what you say, what you do, and how you say it actually becomes part of what they feel we all are like.
right.
And so every time I would enter any situation, I had to start with myself
Mm-hmm.
because often I knew information about people, places, things that I knew might want to be discussed. And I had to remember who this person is and how I feel about them. As I hear you speaking about the different things that are happening in the world,
Yeah.
you can see your face, your emotions. We're trying to stay, calm,
Right.
but yet they are thought provoking.
Mhm.
So when you start with yourself, you become self aware.
Right.
Self awareness then can go out into other people. As you meet with someone and they're talking detail, 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 what do you know? They are a specialist.
Mhm.
They like to talk in detail. Now, usually that could get under your nerves if you happen to be a generalist and you just want the bottom line.
Right.
But now that I know that, I can then interact with that person in a way that those details are very important to them. So any detail I give them, I have to either redefine just to make sure that they did not misinterpret it,
Yeah.
or when I'm listening to something, now I can ask him or her for the details of that particular piece so that I am more informed.
Yeah, that makes sense. How important do you think it is in diplomacy to, because it came up last year and everything like that, to present a certain um, aura or way of presenting yourself and everything like that? Because I do remember that there was the whole notion the first time that Zelensky met with Trump and they felt that he was not dressed accordingly, according to the Trump standard and everything like that. And that became like a whole situation and all along those lines. And I know that even here, I'm in Durham, North Carolina, and we have Black Wall Street and everything like that. There's a number of Black Wall Streets. Tulsa was one, and there was a number of other cities, Rosewood, even Central Park to some degree back in the heyday of New York and all along those lines. But I remember Skippy Scarborough when he was living, he talked, and he's a mortician that was the staff historian where I currently work at and everything like that. And I'm the staff historian now. But he talked about how people in that day, let's say the 50s and the 60s, would dress stylishly, even if they were just going to the grocery store. So you might see guys dressed in suits and stuff like that, even if they were just going to someplace like the grocery store. And we don't see that as much now because he was talking about how people took pride in being dressed up in the earlier days and everything like that. And it's not as common now. People might run to the grocery store in their tennis shoes or in any kind of outfit. So how important is that?
Their pajamas. In their pajamas.
Right.
Well, yes, it is very important. That's kind of interesting because I remember there was an event when we were diplomats we were in Argentina and Mexico, and one of the senior dignitaries' wife came dressed rather like a cowboy. You know, everyone was in elegant attire, and hers had more of a kind of a cowboy theme. Had little dangles and she was disdained. I was shocked that women from around the world wouldn't have seen her as being unique. I think in our country would say, "Oh, you're representing Texas," but in that particular time frame, she was asked to either, after this was over, to either be careful with what she wears or return to the States and feel comfortable living in her own attire in her own country.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mentioned it earlier, I'm gonna bring Rick Rosner, and he has joined us, as has Nick Palveda, the founder of the network, and all along those lines. But Rick is one of our regular panelists, and I know that sometimes we have a habit of, and we sometimes joke about it and everything, of talking over each other. So how much is that a problem in diplomacy? And I know that Jacoby, who may join us later, talks about even being authentic in what we are saying. He has another expression, I don't know if it's authentic, but basically being honest in what we're saying and not trying to gaslight people and things along those lines. So I was just wondering how much of that is an issue in diplomacy and conversation as well, because you've definitely written this book on how people can address each other better. And like I said, I know that even here on this show, we sometimes, because it's usually a panel of anywhere from 5 to 6, sometimes even more than that. And sometimes it can get a little bit out of control. And as the moderator, I try to keep it in control, but even I know that I'm losing control sometimes. So I was just wondering if you can talk about how important it is to respect people and to listen, because I know that the old saying is that, and I just don't, you only use a Christian term and everything like that, even though not everybody that's listening is Christian, but there's an old saying that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on this notion of trying to listen to the other side and being fair in your listening to the other side?
There's two clever little sneaky things that you can do. The first one is using your eyes. Your eyes really can dominate any conversation.
Right.
And no one knows that, or very few know that. The second is the art of listening.
Mm-hmm.
You see, when you pick up on little nuances, you listen, you wait till they finish, and then you take note of those little nuances that help the individual define self. Was that an aggressive term?
Mm-hmm.
Are you feeling inadequate? What can we do about that? What would you like to do differently? And then you look at them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and in that sense, and that way, and all along those lines. I was just wondering, and Rick may have some questions as well. How did you get involved in diplomacy and spy work? Because a lot of people don't get in that field. I actually know that sometimes it's even interesting how people are discovered to be spies and everything like that. Because I have many jobs, and many people on this show know that, and one of them is working for a testing company, and one of the notorious Russian spies that got caught was sentenced and everything like that. He wound up working for that same company. So I know that a lot of people were fascinated. And I think his name was, it wasn't Peter. I can't remember which one it was, but he was involved in one of those Russian spy cases, was definitely sentenced and spent some time in jail. But then after having served his time and everything like that, he wound up working for a testing company. So a lot of times we were fascinated by his past when we discovered it and everything like that. So I'm just wondering, how did you get involved in this world of diplomacy and spies?
Actually, I was living in Argentina because my first husband was Argentine. And I met him in the United States when I was a stewardess, actually. And he didn't want to go to Vietnam. And so the Americans told him, if you don't want to go to help us, then the next time you leave the country, just don't come back. Mm-hmm. So we ended up living in Argentina. I lived there for many years, and that marriage didn't last, but I stayed in Argentina. We had a son. And I was working at the American school, and I met my husband, my second husband, who was a diplomat. So I went from being past a stewardess, school teacher, to diplomat.
Wow.
And at the beginning, I didn't have my clearance. And so I had an opportunity to meet the president of the country, and that was during the Dirty War. And I knew what was happening, but after I met him, the power of speech, I thought he was wonderful. I thought he was so amazing and so interesting that I went home that night and I said to my husband, I know, but I like him. Mm-hmm. And then a few months later, I had my clearance, and he told me more about what was really happening behind the scenes. I was mad at myself. So when we finished our second tour, which was in Mexico, I had to find out, how does the brain work? What's going on? What is the language of power? Because I kept seeing it over and over and over again. And I wanted to know what is happening. So I got my first doctorate in bilingual special education. And then that wasn't enough. So I went on for another one in cultural differences. And that helped. I studied a lot about Vygotsky and interpersonal communication. And language is so powerful that when you use it, you can literally turn a life around. I literally turned a couple around who was ready for divorce in 1 week. Mm-hmm. And all I did was look at them and give them some ideas.
So you said there's a trick with your eyes to dominate. What's the trick?
All right. You just moved right into that story that I wanted to tell you. They sat on the couch. They didn't look at each other. They talked directly at the wall. And they were, everything that the other person would say, they'd roll their eyes. So I asked them to do one thing. I said, I'm noticing this. I want you to connect by looking at each other when you speak. And then when you speak, talk to each other. They came back a week later, holding hands, sitting on the couch together. And the guy said, sex was great. And I was like, wait a minute, what? I said, I thought we were talking about using your eyes. And he said, yeah, but when we actually did look at each other, we re-engaged with a feeling that we forgot and thought we had lost.
Yeah.
And they stayed together.
My wife
Right,
and I have been in couples counseling for more than 30 years because we have really good insurance.
I love it.
But it's helpful. It's like relationship push-ups. And yeah, you do learn to communicate. Well, I learned I had a bad counselor with a girlfriend 40 years ago. And I learned the trick to win couples counseling, and nobody should win. But no, it's been good.
You learn to play the game.
Well, I learned that you have to walk in with gripes. The person who thinks everything's okay, that's the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Diane, how interested is it to know cultural differences? Because I know that one of the stereotypes you mentioned, marrying a Latin American gentleman from Argentina and everything like that. I don't know what the second husband's background was. And all along those lines, shucks, I don't know your own background and everything. But I do know that there is a stereotype, and we have a Latin show here on the network, Que Pasa Moher, that deals a lot with the power of the Latin American community in terms of their dollar value and their impact on the American economy. But I do know that there are also very much stereotypes about Latin America, like the macho man and the submissive woman and all of those things. And some of them are, like many stereotypes, are based on fact, but there are also sometimes an overuse of the stereotype. So I'm just wondering if you could talk about that in terms of diplomacy, because I do know that sometimes you can have a disdain even for somebody, and you might carry that disdain into your talking and negotiating with people.
Yeah, something I've noticed when after coming back, that the American culture are very closed. The first thing that happened to me that really opened my eyes to the Latino culture was just that from the beginning, people would come up and tell me what they really thought about me. Hey, if you dress like that, you kind of look like an ugly American. And I called it open conversations. And the way you can actually define this is put on like Netflix and watch a Latino telenovela, and then watch an American soap opera or one of the, a series, and you will see how closed the American language is. What a difference. So I started using that in my work. And I permitted my son, my friends, my college students to define self. Do you know that as I've been doing these podcasts, the first thing that business people are telling me that they cannot hire my college students? I said, why? Because they are not self-aware. Go home tonight, talk to your husband, to your wife, to your children, ask them, who are you? I don't want to know where you're from, where you were born. I don't know about football. I don't care. Who are you? I did it with my law class. I was teaching law at the time. And not one person in my law class could tell me self. Wow. Now, you try that with what's happening in our schools. You try that with what's happening in your family and with your wife.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I just want to bring in Jacoby, because Jacoby's the one who's been really getting on us a lot and everything. And I kind of quoted him, but I didn't get the exact quote, so I want him to say it and everything. Jacoby, what's that thing you say about us being authentic and truthful? Because Diane does a lot in diplomacy and communications, and I know a lot of times when we're having our debates, you even sometimes talk to Nick about gaslighting and everything like that. But there's a word that you use. I think it's you say we have to be authentic or we have to be honest. But I don't want to misquote you in what you say. You said it several times on the show, but I just wanted to you to describe it so that Diane can address it even with us and everything like that, because she's a communication and diplomacy expert, and I know that there's a phrase that you use regularly.
I mean, yeah, it's I use actually both of them. Yes, you definitely have to be authentic, but you definitely have to be honest and not play word games, because we all know semantics. You can say that you're a trash man, or you can say you're a manager of receptacle.
Recycling.
Yes. So we all know that you're a trash man. Just be honest about what you're saying, because then that doesn't lead to miscommunications and then problems with, whatever happens in the follow-up of that communication. So yeah, it's just about being honest, being authentic, no gaslighting. Just don't play semantic games.
Do you do political consulting? Because here in the U.S., each political party has its own problems with getting message. I mean, the Republicans win with the fire hose of just getting out there and saying stuff. The Democrats are bad at messaging often.
Well, actually, no, I had never thought of doing that. I think if they read my book and took it to heart, one thing that I do say across the board, why do we always pick up on the negative of everyone? If a child is diagnosed with autism, first thing you think about is, oh, what's wrong with him? And then you start treating him differently. If a person comes in with a cultural difference, instead of us looking at the beauty that that culture brings into our relationship, we look at them as a deficit, and we want to change it. We want to make them better. But if you see them as a beauty, then that beauty can enhance the rest of the group. I did it with a group of men who were from the Orient, and they had to learn how to write. And 3 of them, their parents were in these arranged marriages. Mm-hmm. And we had these amazing conversations about whether it was a good idea or not. And they could define their selves, within the situation that was happening and how people saw their marriage in this United States. Mm-hmm. It helps you become really centered within yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've got Nick, the founder of the network, here as well. I've heard everybody else has made comments and everything like that. He's actually a lawyer and has been involved in pension law and a number of other things, including founding this network. But I know that sometimes even there is this notion that certain careers are better at communication than others, and lawyers are supposed to be one of them, as are journalists, but sometimes they can get caught in rhetoric and everything like that. So I just wanted your take as to whether, as a law professor, what your notion is of lawyers in terms of their communication skills.
Oh, you're asking me? I thought you were talking to
you. Right.
Well, I'm not a lawyer. No. My background is bilingual special education, and I'm an educational therapist. No. But in terms of law, well, I think that the same thing seems to hold true. As soon as you're fighting your case, you're looking at the negatives. And obviously, you have to do that. But when you find out a positive and you can build on that in a way that can build your case for your client, then obviously your client who comes into the realm as being an inadequate person can now leave the room as someone that has many, many possibilities, and that we're not looking at the strengths that this person can bring into the situation that's happening.
Since I actually live in Barcelona, so I'm broadcasting from Barcelona, Spain. I moved here about 2 years ago. I like to travel. Yeah. So I just got back from Venice. I was in Istanbul last week, or 2 months ago, a month or so ago, but I was in Venice last week. And then I'm going to Vienna this month. A question I have for you, though, is Argentina, because there's a nonstop from Barcelona, Argentina.
Wow.
What are your thoughts about Argentina, to visit, live there, et cetera? Because I like going to different countries. So tell me about it.
Matter of fact, when I lived there, I think the literacy count was like something like 70 or 80% literate, not illiterate. My maid would come in and say, hey, happy 4th of July. And how did you know that? We study that. Yes, they're very literate. They're very informed. They watch news from all over the world. And I was very, very comfortable there, given all the situations that were happening at the time with the dirty war. I feel that they're very, it was actually started with hierarchy that came in and lived there. And it's a wonderful country and has stayed very literate for over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I would highly recommend that you go to Argentina.
Okay, so it's worth going to take a look at it.
Sounds like a great place for you to visit. Before getting to Rick and everything like that, tell us the title of your book one more time and the whole realm of what the book is about. I know it's definitely about diplomacy and definitely about being effective communicators, but if you just tell us the title of the book once again.
It's the power of connection, and it's understanding individual differences to uplift and empower. I believe that everyone deserves the right to be seen and respected. And I don't care who you are, from the highest ranking person in the world to the most innocent person alive. They all deserve respect. And when you start every conversation with respect, and this is what the book is about, we are not the same. So, Mark, you're very verbal. So now that I know that about you, this is a unique difference that you have that I respect. And I listen to every word you're saying so that I can pick up on information that can then guide me into how you're going to be proceeding. Yeah. So if you get to understand, so the first part of the book is understanding individual differences. You don't have to have a test or anything like that. You become very clever at this. If you learn these little nuances, I would interview people on my first interview with someone, and they would leave saying, "How do you know me when you never met me?" And that is the part of really understanding individual differences. Then the second part of the book are the strategies. How do you use the information you gather in the first part of the book to then use it in real life in the second part of the book? And then I use a lot of case studies so you can see that.
Speaking of case studies, real difficult question that I was curious about. There's a lot of world countries that are in conflict and they don't seem to like each other and they don't seem like they will ever get along and everything like that. I'm thinking about Eritrea and Ethiopia. I'm thinking about Ukraine and Russia. I'm thinking about even Israel and Palestine and a number of other countries that I could name and everything like that. So in your communication skills, have you been able to cross by some of these boundaries that seem like they are can't be penetrated and everything like that? Because there are a number of countries that have been at conflict with each other for decades, and it seems like you can't get past their conversations with them not liking each other and everything like that. So just wondering, in your own research, have you found ways to get past some of these deep-seated differences? You talked about differences.
Well, it's really the art of listening.
Mm-hmm.
And they are bound and determined to define their issues over listening to the ideas and concepts that the other people may have. And so sometimes it's really based on what are your goals? And if you're not going to break those barriers, then obviously every conversation is going to be a nil.
Yeah.
So our communication style is kind of changing, less face-to-face, more face-to-device. A, how do you deal with that? And B, what is it doing to our senses of self?
It's really changing your brain. There's actually studies out there where they're finding that long time on the devices is actually changing the brain structure. So I use ask, don't tell all the time. So I love getting people into discussions about what works and what doesn't. So they literally redefine self. They really define what they're doing. Especially I take teenagers and I say, okay, guys, you're on your iPads and different things that you're on, different media. How do you feel when you get off, sometimes very depressed. And then I go extended speech because, and I listen and I listen. And when they talk, the words go to their brain. I actually did brain research, and this is what we saw, is that when people talk to themselves in their head, they actually had lighting in all the right areas. But when they didn't, it was all over the place.
Yeah. That makes sense, Dan. And how do you get past the mask? Because I know a lot of times people, I mean, there's a term in the African American culture and other cultures as well of code switching, because you might present yourself one way in corporate America and another way when you're out with your fellows and all along those lines. And there's this notion that's been out there definitely during the pandemic that a lot of people are walking around wearing various masks. So they are masking their identity, coming back to that whole notion of true self and everything like that. So how do you get past all these people that are sometimes walking around with multiple masks and everything like that?
Well, because they're replicating the mask that the other person is putting on.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Don't blame yourself. Blame your acquaintances. And pretty soon you'll start to find out whose mask is real, and then which mask do I actually define. Because self is always there. Mm-hmm. It's just the mask that you feel that you need to put on in the front of that particular person.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I can definitely see that. What's the one thing that your book has revealed that has surprised a lot of the corporate people when you have done these researches, or even the college kids? Because it sounds like you've done a lot of work with college kids as well. So I'm sure that they are surprised by some of the things that they find out about themselves, but also some of the tricks that they learn in the book. So what's some of the things that have really caught them off guard, for lack of a better term?
When you hear yourself talk, let's say you and I are talking and I point out your eloquence in the way that you speak. No one's ever told you that. And if they have, then it's just a replication of validation.
Yeah.
So when I start talking to people, and I explain this to my college students, I say, when you define self, then you would then have confidence. So what do? I get them to start talking. And then I'll mention, yes, when you defined that particular point, you were very eloquent. You were very explicit. Now these are words that then this person takes on as being part of them. And so self-awareness helps self-esteem. And when you have self-esteem, you have more self-confidence. So then you're going to be able to take more risk. You're not afraid because now you know who you are. So when you're confronted with somebody that kind of used to scare you, you're not scared anymore because you know that you have these attributes and he has these others.
Yeah.
And then you start doing it with your friends, you start to become a leader.
Yeah.
Because you start looking at you like, oh man, you're awesome.
Just really quickly, because I saw that Lee Newton Rhodes, he can't apparently get on camera, but he's a past, one of the people that has been here before, past panelists, that's the word I was looking for, and everything like that. But he was putting in the chat that you can't always talk to people, evil is real, and everything like that. So what do you say to folks that are feeling that they can't talk to people, certain people, because they are truly evil and everything like that? Because that's what he was saying, was that there are some people that he doesn't feel he can talk to because they are definitely folks that he doesn't want to associate with. And I know that Lee Newton Rhodes was a past presidential candidate, if I remember correctly, and it's also definitely like a small party and everything like that. But he's also very Christian oriented, if I remember correctly, and everything like that. So just wondering, what do you say to folks like that that are thinking that evil is real and there are people that they can't talk to because of them being defined as evil?
He's right. He's absolutely right. If that person is redefining you and you start to go to where they're at, you're bringing yourself down. So if you have self-esteem, like Lee probably has, then why are you going to their level? Let them come up to yours. You know what I find, that even like when I work with kids that are incarcerated, a kid came up to me with a piece of glass, stuck it up to my neck. And I looked at him as a human being. I didn't get mad. And I said, where'd you get that? He said, a piece of glass broke over there. I said, where do we need to put that? And I looked him right in the eyes. And he said, in the garbage. I said, take me. He did. And you know what I did? Then I looked right at him and I said, thank you for being responsible. The kid completely turned it around. So, yes, there is evil out there, but use your brain.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know my brother does a lot of work with at-risk youth, and there's that whole notion of trying to have successful communications, even with those folks that are at risk. And I know part of what goes on in that conversation, and I've even brought it up on this show and other shows, is that if you use terms like at risk, if you use terms like disabled, if you use terms like, there are a number of terms that I could say, even ex-con, you sometimes paint that person in a certain way even before you've gotten to know them and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on that, because I know that I tried to not to use, I know I just used it just then, but I try not to use the word at risk, because if you saw somebody at risk, you've already painted them into certain kinds of corners and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on these terms that we give people and how they might present them as a box that we're fitting them in.
Well, that's where you go to individualization. Words can kill, but they can also heal, build bridges. You are absolutely right, Lee. Yes, because when you start to define the individual that you're working with, man, this guy went through hell as a kid. He got beaten up by his parents. I had a kid who didn't want to learn how to read because he loved his brothers that were in this gang. So I flipped it around. I said, hey, can the head guy read? And he said, yeah. And I said, so what, do you ever want to be the leader? He said, yeah. I said, so what do you need to do? He said, learn to read. I said, amen. So what did he do? Within like 2 months, this kid was reading. And we turned his life around. So yes, take the negative, see the positive, and turn it around. I mean, I have not lived an innocent life. I have worked with people from all over, and the nicest and the worst. And yet, if you learn how to use these little strategies, they're so simple. My son uses them all over the world. You know what he tells me? He said, Mom, they're so subtle that no one knows what I'm doing. No one.
Well, nobody knows. You mentioned that you had worked in the prisons. I just see your hand, Eric, and I'm definitely going to go to you next and everything. But a lot of people are afraid to go, even though there's a lot of people that probably need to be reached in the prison. They're afraid to go into the prisons, even though I've got friends that are in the acting field and other fields in the arts that have gone to the prisons and have definitely seen some change in the prisoners that they have worked with. But I was just wondering, how difficult did you find it to get to work in the prisons? And is that something that you would encourage other people in your field to do? Because there's a lot of folks that probably could learn these communication skills that are in our prison systems. It's a very big system that we have.
Well, actually, I didn't work in the prison. I worked in a school that was a brand new thing that they were trying. The kids were able to choose to go to juvie, or they could actually go to this incarcerated school where they were in school all day with guards, etc. And then the other time that I worked, it was actually the military took over a group of kids, and they housed them at the military encampment. And I was on the board. And I said, look, if you're going to work with these kids, there's one thing that I don't want you to do. Because my husband went to West Point. I said, look, you don't tell them what to do. What? I said, no. You ask them, where do your clothes need to be? Where do your shoes need to be? Is that the correct way to speak with me? Where do your eyes need to be? These kids graduated, and I mean, everybody cried at how they turned their lives around. So stop telling people what to do and just respect them. Listen to what they have to say and treat them as humans.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Michelle Obama famously said, when they go low, we go high.
Exactly. Amen.
And that was 15 years ago. I spent a lot of time on X, Twitter. And when Musk bought that thing, he let back on tens of thousands of users who were kicked off for being jerks. And so now it's just a swamp of jerks. So do you just abandon it? Do you get on there and just like try to drop nice bombs? What do you do?
How does your body feel when you are reading some of these comments?
There's people talk about cortisol, which is like the stress hormone. So I feel stressed.
Exactly.
After a day of it, I'll go down and I can't eat dinner because I'm too jangly.
So if you were to talk to yourself, does your body like that?
No.
Exactly. So is this a good choice?
No, it's a terrible choice, but I don't want, that's where I built my social media house. And it's too big a pain to put it up on wheels and roll it over to some other frickin'.
No, it's wonderful because you are being informed. That's the beauty of what you like to do. But take that information and gather it into a nucleus. What is the common issue that's going on in these groups right now? Now you have something big to talk about. But if it's just one guy here and one guy there, it's like you don't have enough water. But if you have enough, then you say, there is a river going through social media right now, and this is the main commentary. I'm going to talk to that. Now you have a lot of ears on your side.
Yeah, that makes sense. And all along those lines, you said that you've done work in diplomacy, and definitely sounds like we need diplomacy big time in this particular era that we're in the year 2026 and everything like that. But what was one of the most biggest successes you had as a diplomat? You mentioned being a diplomat in Argentina and Mexico, but what was what you consider one of your biggest successes as a diplomat?
I think just the positivity that we had in working with people from all over the world, even subversives, and we did good work. And so I think it was the strategies that my husband and I used that made our work well-defined.
That makes sense. We got Sasha joining us as well. He'll be having his show about Ukraine and Russia and China and some of the things that are going on in that space at 11 o'clock. And he'll have some of his folks, including one from Ukraine and everything like that, so who's involved in journalism and a number of other fields as well. So definitely, Sasha, we've been talking to Diane. She's a diplomat and a ex-spy, but she's also been involved in teaching people communication skills and all along those lines. So I don't know if you have any thoughts around that or just what's going on in your mind in terms of the world events, because I did talk about the world events at the beginning, including a lot of what's going on in Israel and definitely all in that space.
Well, we're living in a changing world. The old moral order doesn't work. There are no rules anymore. And in fact, the Russia, by attacking Ukraine, broke the rule. It was subject to all kinds of sanctions. It was a horrible thing. However, with the attack on Iran, U.S. equalized what Russia did to Ukraine. So there is no more saying that Russia is pariah state, it's terrorist state or anything. There is U.S. right here attacking Iran as a much weaker country, same as Russia attacked Ukraine, which is also much weaker country. Is it? Is it much weaker country? We'll find real soon. Ukraine is doing fantastic job. It's now helping the Gulf states with their technologies and their experience and the know-how. And I'm wondering, in case of invasion of Iran, what's going to happen on the ground against Iranian 1 million strong army with kids 12 years old armed with rifles and machine guns and so on. So this is at least Russia is going to be pushed away from Ukraine, that's for sure. Now, is that going to be a fate of U.S. Army to be pushed around? What a horrible thing. So I hope that Trump hasn't lost everything and he still has some brains. I don't know if he ever had any, but maybe he did. So if he had something still left there, so he must do what he does really well. It's a taco. Chicken, 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 taco, 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 taco. Run away, leave it all alone, forget about it, and go back and play golf. If he would play all his second presidents just played golf, he would be perfect president. He would be the best president of all nations, all times. However, he wanted something more. Well, he's got something he wanted. He got more. It's a horrible situation for the United States where he got his country into. But you see, Trump never was really a president for people of the United States. He was president for Trump himself and doing all the Geschäft diplomacy. That's all what he wanted. Why he lost interest to Ukraine lately? Why? Not because of Iran. Because there is no Geschäft anymore. All the money, the $250 billion, which were frozen Russian money in Europe. So he wanted to get some peace deal that at the end of the day, he and Putin will split that money under the pretense that Putin will help a part of Ukraine, which he got earlier, and Trump will help. But actually, we all know that money would go half in Putin's pocket and half in Trump's pocket. Now, when European Union basically uses this money as a collateral for its $120 billion loan to Ukraine, so there is no more Geschäft, there is nothing to fight. So there is no more money. He lost interest in that. Now he's working on his deal with Iran. He wants to get half of the proceeds from the Strait of Hormuz and split it with the Iranian Ayatollah, or whoever Iranians will put in. That deal will fall. Run away. There is no Geschäft anymore. No money. Finita la comedia. Okay, everybody goes home. Okay, it wasn't a good experience for the United States. But was Vietnam good experience? Afghanistan was better? Or what? So Iran is it's probably going to be the worst of them all. Because US obviously has enough power to subdue Iran, including ground invasion, including many other methods. You know what the problem is? In case of all-round ground invasion, there will be incredible losses for Americans. They will lose probably 10 minimum, most likely 50,000 men. So what's happened? Yes, there is a way to subdue Iran, to take over Iran, to invade Iran, to do anything. The problem is that America is not prepared to pay the price required in this case. Yes, we want Iran, we want to invade Iran, but we are not willing to pay the price. Give it to us. We don't pay the price, just give it to us. Oh, you don't give it to us? Okay, so then taco. Okay, that's it. No price, no willing to pay the price. Iranians are prepared to pay any price for their freedom, from their integrity. US is not. That's all the difference there is. Therefore, taco. I'm done.
Okay, glad to hear your perception and everything like that. Just really quickly, Ms. Diane, and everything like that. I did mention on this show before that there was a lot of successful, and some people might not say it wasn't as successful, particularly of social media, but there was a lot of successful propaganda that has been put out by Iran where they try to paint America in one way or another. And I did read, I think it was yesterday, that we are about needing America to launch our own version of this psychological warfare or advertisements. And I know that it's happened in other wars as well. So I just wanted your take on that as a former diplomat, because definitely they were doing some very unique AI commercials that were definitely painting Trump in a certain kind of way and the war in a certain kind of way. And it looks like we're about to counter that with our own version. I think think it's called PSYOP or something like that. Is what it used to be called, and all along those lines. But it sounds like we're about to launch back into some of that psychological warfare that goes on as well. But I just wanted your take on that and whether that's going to be successful, because I just heard about that yesterday, I believe it was, that some of the powers that be are thinking that they want to launch a counter to what Iran has been doing.
You know what I'm afraid of? Our youth are so accustomed to people telling them what to do. You know, the gentle parenting, the ask, the tell, don't ask, that when they are confronted with this psychological warfare, if someone's not telling them what to do or how to act or how to think, then maybe these comments will permeate their own brain, and it may transform them. So I am really on a quest to start this very easy way of working with anyone to get people to start verbalizing their thoughts and redefining what do they really think, what do they need, and is this a good idea that's coming into my space? And if it's not, just like Rick and I were talking about, if it didn't make him feel good, then does he need it? But he can use the negative stuff that people are saying as a positive for himself, because now he has bites. He has sound bites that he can really prove that people are saying and people are doing. Now he becomes the author and the owner of change.
So there's a show on Netflix called The Diplomat. Do you watch it, and do you have thoughts on it?
Oh, I love it. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Is it at all act? I mean, obviously it's a soapy TV show, but like, does it get some stuff right, and what does it get wrong?
Oh, it does embellish some things, but I could relate to a lot. I could relate to almost everything that was going on that she was saying. Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lot of friends and communication that goes on behind the scenes that you build these relationships as you're seeing them all the time and you're speaking with them. That gives you an opportunity to see how people think, how they feel. And even years later, you can tap these people if you're in the right circles for assistance or information. Yeah. Riding in motorcades and all that. When I went from being a teacher to, the chauffeur picked me up from school at 12, and then at 1:00 I had lunch with so-and-so and tea with so-and-so, and 9:00 we had something else. I was exhausted after 1 week. It's a lot of work. I mean, if you really, really, really want to work hard, definitely go into it. But if you feel like it's just going to be party and fun, it's not. You don't go to parties, you work them, So everything is work. And you're always thinking. That's why the essence of the book, you have to always fine tune that second source in your brain before you say anything or do anything.
Okay.
But if we start teaching our kids to think, and our husbands to think, and our wives to think, man, we're going to have some better relationships. I know this. My husband died in 2020, and I met a man whose wife died 2 months later. And we were both married for many, many years. And we used these strategies. And he said to me the other day, he said, I have never been more relaxed and more happy in any relationship than I have been in this one. And I feel the same way, because we have open conversations about everything.
So what you're saying is, if you're going to have a conversation with somebody, you need to understand yourself well enough to know what you want out of the conversation.
You don't have to predefine that. You have to understand yourself well enough to know if this person is here to hurt me, then I flip it around. These words comfortable? They're not for me. So when you choose to make some comfortable remarks, we'll come back and chat. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, then that's fine. You'll still be my friend, but not really an intimate one. That's open. That's it.
I appreciate it and everything like that. Go ahead, Rick.
So I worked in entertainment for a long time, and often in entertainment, it's especially bad now because the money has been squeezed out of TV and movies. Often people are in work situations where they need the job, but the conditions, like it just takes like one or two, like you can have a lovely production, but if there's a jerk in there and they can like kind of, poison the whole thing. So how do you work around a jerk?
Well, that depends on who the jerk is. If it's the director, and you feel comfortable enough to talk with him, you can say, I've been thinking about this, just like you and I were talking. I was thinking about this. And from a social perspective, what is your goal? Because maybe I, as the actor, didn't know the underlying goal of this particular person. And then once I understand that he really had a different way that he wanted to present this, I have a choice. I could stay with that presentation or bow out.
That makes a lot of sense, everything like that. We're going to wind down. If you can tell folks, Diane, once again, how you can be reached and how they can get a copy of the book for those that are interested in getting the book, since we've been definitely talking about this great book of yours and all along those lines. And then we'll get ready to get to Sasha's show about Ukraine, Russia, and China that he'll be doing with Mr. Lockheed, and as well as the gentleman from Kiev, Ivan, and everything like that. So definitely we'll be getting ready to head over there shortly. But if you can tell folks how they can reach you.
Yes, my book is available everywhere, especially Amazon. It's The Power of Connection. And I have a new one coming out. It's called Helping Kids Take Ownership of Their Lives. Every parent should read this, every cousin, uncle, grandparent. It also helps relationships. It's really a very interesting book because it's brain-based. And then if you want to get in touch with me, I have a website, Dr. Diane Olvera, 2 N's, .com. And I'd love to have any feedback and any ideas that you're questioning or asking. We'll answer them. I have free download, so you can, take this and use it to maybe start your new way of life.
Sounds great, and we definitely look forward to hopefully having you back on some future shows as well.
I just typed in Dr. So I just typed in your website. Is there a dot after doctor? And
no.
Do you spell out doctor?
No, it's just DRDIANNEOLVERA.com.
Huh. All right. Well, maybe because my computer's 50 years old.
Well, that we're going to get out of here, and we'll see you.
Well, keep in touch, guys. I would love to continue talking with you. This is fun. Thank you.
Wait, I put an I in Olivera. All right, now I see it. Okay.
No I.
Okay.
OLVERA.
Boom.
And he'll figure it out, but we're going to get it.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Amen. Good boy.